Hi, I'm Grant Webster, and I'm here predominantly to talk to you today about electric fencing. I work for a company called Kerbl. There's me there. And I suppose I'm a smallholder myself of a very small farm that up near Pitlochry that we've run for years. I've just got a few cows nowadays, but in the past we had quite a number of sheep at one point. We've had Tamworth pigs for the kids to play with, and hens, and all sorts. So I've done my share of small holding on a small scale. There's my favourite thing on the farm, my Fendt tractor, which is 1991, and I've had it since 2005, I think. So in March this year, I went to work for Kerbl Rutland. Rutland, a long-established UK electric fencing company that was purchased in January of this year by Kerbl, a German company, manufacturer of electric fencing and seller of about 5,000 other agricultural products. I'll let you have a view of some of these later. Lots of them are relevant to smallholding. Kerbl, very well established in the German and the European markets, turning over about 360 million euro. Much smaller up until now. They've sold mainly through wholesalers in the UK, but they bought Rutland Fencing to give themselves an established customer base and sell into the UK market. My previous sales experience for many years was in the veterinary drug industry. So Kerbl of catalogues, which you can see online, and we have physical catalogues as well with a full range of products, equine, agricultural, and pet supply products. So a vast range of products as well as electric fencing. Here we can see a display board with a number of the products up. That's the sort of display you might see in stores selling our products. So really, moving on to the subject in hand, electric fencing. So when we look at an electric fencing system, perhaps the first thing we focus on is the electric fencing energizer. But there's a lot more to it than the energizers. The energizers themselves, you've got a choice of mains powered ones, which is definitely the most convenient and if possible is the way to go. We've got a dual powered energizers, which you can use plugged into the 240 volt, but you could also use with a 12 volt battery. So that gives you flexibility if you might not always have the fencer in one place. And if you can at times need to use it on a battery, but no battery charging, no worries if you plug it into the 240 volt. Probably the most important part of the electric fencing system, almost certainly, is the earthing. And certainly until I came into the industry and have run electric fences for years, it's the part that I was most ignorant about. And that certainly would be the case for most people running electric fencing. You know, few of the actual operators really understand the importance of having a good earth. And I mean, you really should be putting a galvanized, because rust on an earth stake would then cause a problem with conductivity. But really, a meter-long galvanized earth stake driven into the ground is what's required for an electric fencing system. We're also looking at conductors. Now, depending on what sort of animal you're going to keep in, there are various options on the conductor front, and we'll discuss those a little later when we go over fencing for different animal groups. End and corner insulators are very important as well. The end and corner insulators need to be strong enough to hold the fence as well as just keeping the height. I mean, they need to be able to take a tension. So we've got quite a bit to talk about as the presentation goes through. I've again mentioned earthing because it is such an important point. And I mean, these are the emblems that you'll see on electric fencing units that are being sold that enable you to choose what fencer to buy. If you see the earthing one to the top, vitally important. The next emblems show you the amount of joules coming out of the fencer, and let you choose the correct fencer for your particular situation. Also, all of our fencing units show the maximum length of fencing that that particular unit can cover. But obviously, if you've got an electric net or if you've got multiple wires, it's not just the total length of fence. We've got to calculate the total length of wire within that net or fencing system. So here we see a representation of an electric fence again. Message in the middle, you should have at least 3,000 volts anywhere on that fence line. So test it at different places. You can see the earth streaks predominantly put into the ground there. So let's move on to the layout of your fencing system. Really, you want to be taking a note or making a plan of exactly what you need in terms of length and insulators and posts, etc. Online and in the books that are handed out in the stores that sell our fencing, we've got products to help you estimate exactly how much wire, how many posts, and what you will need. So that's just a representation of what you can see in those guides. So if we look at fencing for different types of animals, I mean, in the past with cattle, I've quite often only used one wire when it wasn't so important whether or not they stayed in. But most generally, there'd be a two-wire system for keeping cattle in. Mostly, especially where the wire was going to be moved regularly, we'd be looking at using a poly wire, so a polypropylene wound with a conductor, a stainless steel conductor wound through it, with choice of different insulators depending on what sort of posts and things you use, and strainers. You see the strain insulator at the end, which is a heavy duty thing able to take a good strain of wire. And it's important you've got a good quality strain insulator to make the system work. So that's your cattle fence. Horses, most normally horses, we use a wide tape. We have different widths of tape to keep the horses in. Some people will use a rope, but it's important to have it's important with a horse to have an electric fence conductor that the horse is able to see. The visual part of it's very, very important for the safety of the horse, etc. And tape is most normally what's used. So electric tape, specific insulators for the tape to hold them on the posts. You may often with horses have we have different types of gate that you can buy when you buy your fencer, where there'll be either a clip-on gate where you or a bungee rope gate where you've got a bungee that it conducts and a hook to hook it on, all insulated. So moving on to sheep fence, permanent sheep fences, we're looking at having quite a number of wires there. Goats in particular are something that smallholders may be dealing with, and goats are particularly hard to keep in, as you probably know. Again, we're still in most cases looking at the jumbo wire, although some people use galvanized wire in this situation. Pigs. Now, I've had some Tamworth pigs, I think I mentioned at the start, and initially. We used a two-wire system for them, and most of the time, if you look at the outdoor professional pig farms, it's two-line systems that are used. These outdoor pig farms are using huge quantities of electric fencing, the big scale ones. With one farm we supplied 1,000 electric fence gate handles to last week, and they had another lot of 1,000 in March. So yeah, electric fencing, we're using galvanized wire predominantly for the pigs. It's much more durable. We're looking at the first wire about 15 centimeters off the ground, and then 10 and then 12 centimeters in an ideal situation. So that's your pig fencing. Now chickens here we're looking at, the main purpose is probably keeping predators out, so keeping foxes, etc. out. So this fencing, there's significant differences in that you'll see that the bottom wire and each second wire in this system is wired back to the earth and the earth stakes to the ground, rather than all being positive, all being the shock wire from the fencing unit. And this means that if a fox, if it tries to clamber through the fence, it's going to have a positive and a negative, if you like, touching it, give it a far, far greater shock. And that's something to very much think about if you're aiming to use electric fencing for hens. Also, in some of the hen situations where you're working in woodland and things, there can be a tendency for the ground to get very dry in a woodland. So you may have to look at even watering your earth stakes during a dry period of time, because the dampness in the soil is what's conducting the electrical impulse. So galvanized wire fencing clamps, insulated wires to join the different elements, to join both the earth wires within that system and the positive wires within the system. So interesting. Also, rabbit netting. Now, I've used rabbit electric fencing in the past. I grew about 7 acres of raspberries many years ago. My son's looking at starting something like that, similar again. So this is definitely something we'll have to be looking at. But again, we see an earth wire just at the bottom of the fence. So not all of the wires electrified, but that means when the rabbit tries to climb up, he's going to get a good shock straight away. Now, badgers are causing significant amount of damage in some areas, and it's quite useful to be able to fence them out. I quite like to see badgers. We've got badgers around the back of the farm here. When I was a small boy, the keepers made sure there wasn't any to be seen anywhere, but we've got quite a number now. We had some right in about the steading the other day, but they can be a terrible nuisance, and you can want to direct them in other areas. So, as we've seen before, we're very much recommending with badgers that we put an earth wire at the bottom of the fence, 10 centimetre gap, and then your live wires, as we see here. Again, galvanized wires required. They're quite a tough animal. But I mean, a lot of this advice would go for a fence that was keeping foxes or things out as well. So that's our badger fence. A little bit of a smaller deer, again, similar situation, no necessity for the earth wire, but lots of situations where we can use electric fencing other than what would be seen as the traditional keeping livestock in place. So keeping things out can be just as important as keeping things in. Again, we've got guides within the online links and in our booklets, which would give you a sort of fence checker, a problem finder, where you can work through and see what your particular problem is. If the thing isn't working as well as it should, we would really recommend, if possible, you invest in an electric fence tester. In my youth, we used a piece of grass onto the fence line and see if we got a shock. On occasion, father would hold on to me, and he knew if I howled, the fencer was working when he touched the wire. But really, an electric fencing tester is the way to not only see if the fence is working, but to trace problems and trace where they are and what exactly is the problem with your fencer. So, for testing, our tip one would be, if there's a situation in the fencer, to remove the earth and the fence leads, so you can test the device. And that means we can see if the actual energizer is working properly. We have energizers sent back for repair quite regularly that are working perfectly well, where the situation wasn't the energizer, but a problem, an earth problem, or a situation where the fencer was going to ground elsewhere in the system. When we're looking at the unit can flash and tell you where there's a problem. The 9-volt battery units we sell, flashing red, that means the battery's flat. 12-volt ones flashing red, the battery needs charged up. The 230-volt mains power ones, the LED not flashing, there's no power supply or a problem within the unit. Tip 3 would be to switch the device off, disconnect the fence supply cable at the fence, switch the device back on, using the fence tester, measure the voltage at the end of the fence supply cable, just to make sure you've got full voltage at the end of the going onto the fence at the cable. So tip 4, where you've underground fence supply lines. So this more normally applies where you've got a mains unit, because often where you can plug the mains unit in isn't right beside where your fence is going to be. So you buy an insulated cable to run out to where the fence starts, out of the building, across the yard or whatever. It is vitally important you use a specific electric fence cable. Some people try and use a regular electrical cable, but the insulation is not nearly good enough for the high levels of voltage involved in electric fencing. So it's very low current, very high voltage. So it needs specific, incredibly thick insulation to cope in these situations. Now, if we've tested the fence system and it's not working up to par, we can test how good your earth is. Now, this is rarely done, but in a situation where we really don't think we're getting a good earth, we can take a feed from the fence at least 10 meters away. So we can basically earth the fence that should be giving a shock into earth, and then we can measure how much of the electricity is going direct back to earth, and measure how good the earth is. When we're talking about earth rods, these should be inserted to a depth of 1 meter, as I said. Now, it's crucial that they're sited at least 10 meters away from domestic earth. So your electrical supply for your buildings, for your house, has got an earth that goes to ground. If we put an electric fencing earth too close to those, or in some cases people try and use a building as the earth, so a steel frame building, it can interfere with your earth leakage circuit breakers. You have got the possibility of getting a slight shock from the building if it's been used as the earth. So it's very, very much not the thing to do to go near your domestic earth or a building for your earth rods. Multiple earth rods, if you put them in, should be kept apart. It's no good putting all 3 in one place. We really need to space those. And in long runs of fencing, and where you've got a separate earth wire, as we looked at on some of the fence systems, you can put another earth rod further around in the system, not just relying on what's been put in where your energizer is. So the earth rods must be made from non-rusting material. If you put just a steel earth in and it rusts, the rust acts as an insulator and it stops the fence going to ground well enough. Really, a galvanized thing is the right answer. If we painted it, now you could probably get away with painting an earth rod with like a red oxide paint that is a conductor. But if you paint it with a regular paint, it's again going to be an insulator. So a galvanized rod is really what we want to be using. Tip number 7, vegetation on the fence, remove it. Now, we can go for an oversized unit, and especially with the mains units, they can be quite effective at burning off some of the vegetation. But really, as soon as vegetation touches the fence, then it's that's it, going to earth, and the shock's not going to be available to shock the animal. Any of the conductive material lying on the ground. I mean, I saw some months ago a fence that was a complaint had been made, and the end of the end of the electrical wire was left lying on the ground, so it was simply going to earth. It's vital that that fence has no contact with earth, the actual positive wire. Poor conductive material. Some electric fencing wire can degrade over time. It's important that we make sure that it's still able to conduct. The little wires within the poly wire can break, etc. So we need to make sure the wire's in good order. If we've got a break in that wire, we sell an excellent connector, a Litz clip connector, which is able to very effectively join the wires. Sometimes when a break happens in an electric fence wire and it's just knotted, then it doesn't work so very well. It's important, if you get broken insulators on the system, to replace these with a new insulator. And to check insulators if there's a problem with the operation of the fence, because they can at times, the plastic insulator can have a metal screw in and it can be cracked or whatever and allow it to go to earth. Your conductor wires need to be checked that they haven't broken. And if you've got, like we saw, multiple wires connected in the same fence, so you've got your fencer unit going onto one wire, it's necessary to take a wire connecting the different wires in the fence. And really, every 200 meters, you should be looking at putting on a new connecting wire, connecting the 2, 3, 4 wires that you have energized within the fence. So just to sum up, with your electric fence, the key important things to look at are earthing, insulators, shorting out to ground, and vegetation. So Kerbl Rutland. I'll just finish briefly by going through some of the other products that might be of interest that Kerbl Rutland are bringing to the UK. We're looking at calve houses like we see here. Kerbl actually own the Rheintek company that makes these calf pullers and calving aids. Here we see a range of incubators for eggs, and could well be of interest to some of you. Poultry drinkers and feeders. Here on the pig side, we've got a full range of pig equipment. On the hens, we've got the automatic chicken door. I put the cart before the horse, and I've bought an automatic chicken door for use at home before I bought new hens. But there we are. So thank you very much for your time. I think we've got an interesting range of products that will be of use to you. Thank you. Bye. Wonderful.